Hello chess friends and welcome to Jozarov's chess channel and welcome to a special game that I wanted to show you today. It's one of my games that I recently played on this chess website Lichess. It's a blitz game, but I still think it's a great tactical game that I played, and I've also checked with one of my chess friends, with Brock Henley, asked him should I really publish this one, as I don't like to publish too many of my games because they're not something special sometimes. So this game, I think it will be great because it had really a great tactical queen sacrifice, and as I said, I asked before, so my friend Brock Henley, he said okay, you can do it. I think it's a good game to show to the chess world, and that's why I decided to share this one. So as I said, I played against the fidemaster. I played the move d4, my opponent played the move d5. I played c4, the queen's gambit, e6, the queen's gambit decline, knight to f3, knight to f6, and now knight to c3, the 3 knights variation. Here bishop to e7, and most of the times when my opponent plays this setup, black has always some possibility to go maybe into this Ragozin variation. After the move bishop to e7, I most often play the move bishop to f4, which is the so-called Harrwitz attack. The idea behind this move is to develop the dark square bishop. We don't want to play immediately bishop to e3, as it's blocking out our dark square bishop. So I also don't like the move bishop to g5. It's of course also still common theory, but what I don't like about this move is some potential h6 move with some knight to e4 ideas, simplification move. So what I like is to get out of this positional trades of pieces possibility. I'm trying to stay with the bishops on the board. So in the game, castling played by my opponent, and I play the move e3, and here comes the move c5. When here I basically always I'm trying to wait and see what black will do. When black plays something like c6, or if he plays something like knight from b to d7, then I will play a positional move. Let's see, a positional knight from b to d7. Then I'll play the move c5, and I'll close this queen side with the support of this bishop. I will have a great attack on the queen side with some potential b4, a4 moves and similar ideas. So this is now a new position, but in the game, as I said, my opponent played the move c5, which I still think that it's the best way to proceed against this Harrwitz attack. In the game, I played d takes c5, releasing a little bit the pressure in the center. What I don't want to do is risk an isolated pawn. So when we have these dynamics in the center, then you should always consider option what happens if we trade off the pawns in the center. So for instance, if I allow my opponent some c takes d4 moves, I don't like to recapture here with a knight, because then it can be met with some knight to c6 ideas. Then again, I'm getting challenged. Or I don't also like to maybe get this pawn isolated with some potential after d takes c5. Then if I have to take with e takes d5, my opponent can take maybe something like d takes c4, and I will continue the game with this strategical weakness, and it's this isolated pawn. So I don't like that. That's why I decided to take out this pawn, releasing the pressure in the center, which is still common theory. So I didn't make a mistake so far. And in the game, my opponent played the move queen to a5. Here, I think I played the first inaccuracy. Knight to d2 is not the best way here to proceed. It's the move a3, because my opponent could play maybe the move knight to e4, but then you get b4, attacking the queen. You can really leave the knight hanging. Here queen to b3 is the possibility. This wasn't played in the game. Your opponent has to retreat. I can grab the knight, and then maybe after something like d takes c4, I have the possibility bishop takes c4, and we'll continue the game with an extra pawn. But in the game, I played the move knight to d2. My idea was, if my opponent, for instance, takes the pawn with the bishop, my idea was simply to play knight to b3, grabbing the bishop. For instance, queen to b6 is a possibility. Knight to a4 doesn't work immediately because you get a check, so I would probably take out first the bishop. After queen takes c5, c takes d5, after something like knight takes d5, knight takes, queen takes, e takes d5. I calculated to this particular moment, so I would be satisfied with this position, as I'm continuing the game with the bishop pair, and I have a strategical advantage. My opponent has this isolated pawn. In the continuation, I could even try to play immediately queenside castle, attacking this weakness, or I can even trade off this bishop for a knight, as this pawn is on a light square and my light square bishop is much more powerful. So I would be satisfied with this position. But my opponent, after the move knight to d2, he didn't take the pawn on c5. He played the move knight to a6. He wants to, of course, to recapture here the pawn with the knight. It's not so good to defend the knight somehow with some knight to b3 ideas, as my opponent can escape here to d8 and then he can take out the pawn in a couple of moves. So that's why I finally now decided to play the move a3, because if my opponent takes with the bishop or with the knight, then I have some fork possibilities with the move b4. So that's why my opponent played queen to c5. It was very risky to take this pawn with the minor piece, and now b4. Expanding on the queen side, here after the move b6, I played simply c5. If queen to c6 happens, then I have b5, so the knight would be lost. So that's why my opponent had to play the move queen to d8. And now my friend, I talked to him many times. He's really my chess friend from the USA, Brock Henley. He asked me, why did you play this move bishop to a6? So he probably asked me why I gave up the bishop pair in an early stage of the game. Because after the move b takes a6, which of course happened in the game, now I have created really a blocking pawn structure in the center, also on the queen side. So basically I want to create a blocking system here, because this bishop is blocked out. This bishop is also blocked out. My bishop has still a perfect activity, this dark square bishop, and this knight will always find some weaknesses in black's position, because there are many targets now in black's position. For instance, this e5 square, maybe the d6 square. If you could just imagine, if I place a knight on d6, this would be very dangerous for black. And I was a little bit concerned about this potential e5 move. Here I first castled. My opponent played the move bishop to b7, and I played now again an inaccuracy. I think I played the move knight to f3. The better move is knight to b3, as it prevents this very annoying a5 move. As I said, when you have the bishop pair, you want the position to be open. So this a5 opens the position again for the bishops, and I allowed this move because I played the move knight to f3. And I was scared a little bit about this potential knight to d7 and maybe some e5 pawn breakthrough possibility. So that's why I played this move knight to f3, because after potential knight to b3, my opponent could play knight to d7. But what I didn't see is this move knight to a5 that I have. Or even better, here is rook to c1 first, as the tactical threat after a potential knight to an a5 is to immediately take knight takes c5. So here I would probably have to play something like rook to c1 first, so attacking the bishop. So then after potential, I don't know, e5, then I would have this move knight to a5. If now knight to c5 happens, then I can play bishop takes e5, and now you see this knight is hanging and also this bishop is hanging. So this I didn't play in the game. After the move bishop to b7, I played the move knight to f3. So allowed my opponent to open the position, and when I saw that he played this move a5, my head going like, oh damn, this a5 I allowed, it's really bad. So that's why I decided to place the queen there in order to have this pawn structure still compact here on the queen side. I really wanted to block out these bishops, as this bishop is still blocked out by its own pawns and this bishop is blocked out by my pawn. So I don't want to activate these bishops. If this bishop, one of these bishops, comes into the game, then I will probably lose the game. So that's why queen to a4, and in the game a takes b4 was played, a takes b4, and you see my opponent has now the opportunity to play the move a5. And here I stopped. I took, I think, most of my time to calculate now this, and I played the move c6, counter-attacking the bishop. If bishop to c8 happens, then I have, I think, again a great move b5, simply proceeding here and have two connected pass pawns. So this would be probably a lost game for black. But in the game, of course, my opponent played this move a takes b4, and here I simply decided to sacrifice the queen. So I calculated that my pawn will be on the 7th rank. It will be really an annoying pawn, and I can of course grab a bishop, but also a rook. So I would have a rook, a bishop, an extra pawn, and the activity of this extra pawn. So in my calculations, I thought that everything will be perfectly fine. And when I put this queen sacrifice into an engine, I analyzed this game with the Stockfish engine. The engine also suggested me here that this queen sacrifice is perfectly fine. So this wasn't an incorrect queen sacrifice, which is the most important thing. That's why I decided to also show you this game, because if it would be an incorrect queen sacrifice, I wouldn't show you the game. So that's why here after the move c takes b7, my opponent of course took. Here rook takes a4 is not a possibility. I also calculated a little bit this move, because then knight to d7 solves the position. Here I can play maybe knight to b5, but now my opponent can play queen to b6, and I will never be able to promote to queen anymore. So in the game, that's why I took with the knight, which is the more important thing. And now this knight to d7 idea doesn't work in order to prevent this promotion, because I will have some rook to c1 ideas, and now with the preparation to play rook to c8, and now finally maybe promote to queen. Knight to b6 doesn't work here, because you get a bishop to c7 and you lose the knight. So that's why here in the game, after the move knight takes a4, my opponent tried to play bishop to d6, which seems like a natural move, which seems also like a good move, because it of course protects also this b8 square, which is very important. My bishop's activity was too much to handle, and in the game I simply continued, because as I said, my main goal is to place the rook here on c1 and then c8 and then promote to queen here to b8. So in the game, bishop takes f4 was played, e takes f4, and now queen to b8, which seems of course like a good move. And now I have knight to c5, protecting this very, very important pawn. If knight to e4 happens, then I have this move of rook to a8. If black takes the knight, I'll take of course the queen, and still will have a better position. If you take here the rook, it's not a problem. I still have the promotion. After rook takes here, I think I can even take the knight and simply attack this pawn. After a couple of moves, I will also take this pawn. So again, I think it's winning for me with this extra piece. So in the game, after the move knight to c5, my opponent tried to counterattack. Very dangerous move. b3 tried to deflect my knight from the defense of this b7 pawn, but I continued simply with my plan, rook to a8. If you try b2 here, so far I still have the opportunity to play rook to b1. My opponent cannot promote. The best way here for him is to proceed queen takes a8 again, but again b takes a8, rook takes a8, and now I have knight to d3. Attacking this pawn twice, because I cannot attack it immediately. I get checkmated on the first rank, so that's why here knight to d3. If my opponent plays something like, I don't know, rook to a1, then I have knight to d2. And now the tricky part is, if black tries knight to e4, deflecting my knight from the defense of the rook, I still have this move knight takes b2, because now you cannot take the knight. That's the problem. You lose the rook, so you would be forced to take out the rook on b1. And now after knight takes b1, I still have of course a completely winning endgame, as I'm only one pawn down, but still have this extra piece. So as said, in the game, after the move rook to a8, my opponent didn't proceed with the move b2. He played queen takes f4, but now I simply took this pawn, as my b7 pawn is not hanging anymore. Still, my opponent cannot take this rook. That's the most important thing. And the good thing about this move knight to b3, which I also calculated, that it's protecting my rook on c1, as there were also this tactical threat to checkmate me on the first rank. So my opponent tried to get some defensive pieces back, but now again I played rook to c1. Again, I have this c1 square covered. Nothing can happen. And in the game, my opponent tried queen to e4 with the preparation to play some queen to b1 ideas, again with some checkmate threats. But now I found, I think, some good tactics here. Rook takes f8, knight takes f8, rook takes f8 again, king takes f8, and now promotion to queen. And now basically it's game over because my opponent has only one square, e7, and I played the simple move h3, not allowing some queen to b1 ideas because I still could get checkmate, and probably my opponent waited to see if I'll create some breathing space for my king, and in this position my opponent resigned. So okay, I hope you enjoyed this game. It's really maybe not a special game, but I decided to show you. Sometimes I'll show you a couple of my games if they're okay. I still think that it was a cool game with this queen sacrifice. I also, you see, made some inaccuracies, also some mistakes in the game, but still I was very happy with this outcome and also with my play in this game. It was a 3+0 game, but still I decided to show you this game. I hope you don't mind. Okay, meanwhile you can watch my other commented chess games that I played so far. Here's the link, and you can also watch the best chess games of all time if you want to see the best chess games that have been ever played in chess history. And you can also watch my commented chess games played by computers with some Alpha Zero or Lila Zero, Stockfish games, and many more. You can also subscribe to my channel if you like this content. Thanks you for watching, guys, and chess is the best, of course.